BPC 157, BPC stands for body protective compound. So what's really interesting is if you look at the published research, there's a lot of research. Unfortunately, there is a massive shortage of human research. I think there might be some stuff coming out. I know that there was some done in Croatia years and years and years ago, except they had to retract the study because they basically did their human trials before they did their mouse trials, which is a big fat no-no in the land of research for obvious reasons.
Right.
And so they weren't allowed to publish the papers. And this is like an old story. It just came back to me. I remember I learned about this like years ago when I first got into the peptides. But people have done some human research. It's just there's very little of it. At this stage of the game, there seems to be very little impetus from pharma, who typically big pharma are the ones that have the budgets to do the trials, to do the research so that we can establish that BPC 157 can be used for this, that, and the other thing. The challenge I personally believe also with BPC is it's so pleiotropic. So word of the day is pleiotropic. Pleiotropic, to those of you who don't know, means that it affects so many different areas of the body in so many different ways that it's really hard to put it into a box and say, BPC 157 is a painkiller. Yeah, sort of, but BPC 157 is anti-inflammatory. Oh yeah, it does that too. Oh, BPC 157 seems to help tissues to heal. Yep, does that. BPC 157 is very powerful for gut healing. Definitely does that. BPC 157 is protective to the brain. Check again. BPC 157 would actually have been a great adjunct while you were healing your kidneys. It can also be very protective to the liver and to the pancreas. So it has so many different facets to it that I think that it's kind of like big pharma would be like, not that they wouldn't know what to do, but they wouldn't be able to say, you can only use this for this one thing because all these other things are going to be affected as well, because there's receptors for BPC all through the body.
So who shouldn't take it? I mean, it seems like
a lot of people. Yeah. So again, it is technically not approved for human use when injected subcutaneously. So one thing we haven't touched on yet is both bioregulators and longer chain peptides can be administered by subcutaneous injection. Mm-hmm. In the case of the bioregulator, you're now looking at a synthetic version of that amino acid chain. So you're not getting all the extra stuff that we talked about earlier in the capsule. You're just getting the money shot, right? Mm-hmm. And that can be administered by subcutaneous injection. The longer chain peptides, for the most part, and there's exceptions to these rules, which I can talk about in a minute, if you ate them, your body would be like, oh, that's a protein, I need to digest it. BPC 157 is an exception because guess where it comes from? It is secreted naturally in our gut juices. Okay. It's just part of a bigger protein. So it's kind of like it gets ushered in through the VIP door. It gets, so now there's a lot of talk that, oh, well, if you take BPC orally, it's just going to get broken down in the gut. It doesn't actually. It over time it will, but not before it's done its thing. Mm-hmm. So you can find supplements with BPC 157 that are oral, that are really powerful. What they're not as good for is the musculoskeletal injuries.
Okay. So for those, you want the injectable.
So for those, the injectable is going to be more powerful. Okay. The oral might help with aches and pains, but it won't necessarily be as effective when you're, I had a lady years ago who had a non-union joint fracture in her wrist. So that means that it was like a hairline fracture in the wrist. The wrist is notoriously difficult to heal, partially because you're not weight bearing on it. So she was heading for surgery. And her Hail Mary was a phone call to me saying, Nat, I hear you're working with these peptide things. What should I do? And so my mentor at the time, I called him and I'm like, what should we do? And we gave her a program that was an 8-week program that included BPC, thymosin beta-4, and the growth hormone secretagogues, CJC and ipamorelin. And after 8 weeks, I think it was 8 or 12 weeks, she went back to her doctor, who literally just about fell off his chair. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, what did you do?
Right.
Because the fracture had healed. So that can be the power. Now, who shouldn't use peptides? It's hard to say. And that's the challenge, right? Like I can tell you I'm not a doctor, right? I don't prescribe anything. I don't diagnose illness. I can tell you that I've seen a lot of people benefit from them, but it's not always the right answer. And so I'm much more comfortable advising people to find a practitioner. And there are a lot of them out there who've been working with peptides for a while who can help to guide them.